I stood in the kitchen of our Palo Alto home, 6 months pregnant, my fingers shaking as I clutched the message I'd scribbled for my husband. That was our way. It had always been our way. We spoke through handwritten notes, through gestures in sign language, through gentle touches and meaningful looks. Richard was deaf. He had been ever since a motorcycle crash 5 years before we first met. Or at least, that's what I had accepted as truth during the year and a half we'd been together. He was peering over my shoulder at the note, near enough that I could sense his breath against my skin, when he spoke, clear and unmistakable in a voice I had never heard, "Margaret, there's something I have to say." The paper slipped from my grasp. It drifted down to the tiles between us, and I stared at its slow descent as though caught in a haze. Or perhaps a terrible dream. Because the husband I believed was deaf had just used his voice. Let me step back and explain how I ended up there, in that kitchen, watching my entire reality fracture like fragile glass. I'm 68 now, and I've come to understand that certain tales must begin at the start, no matter how much the memories sting. It was 1991, and I had just turned 32. Still unattached, still employed as an entry-level architect at a practice in San Francisco, still squeezed into a tiny studio I could scarcely pay for. Every Sunday my mother rang without fail, and every Sunday the discussion somehow returned to the same subject. "Your sister Catherine called to say she's pregnant again, that makes 3 grandchildren she's given me, Margaret." 3. How lovely, Mom. The Johnson's girl just announced her engagement. You remember Amy? You played together as children, she's only 26. I'd tighten my hold on the receiver, gazing at the mist drifting across the bay outside my window. I'm glad for Amy. I simply don't see why you're holding out, you aren't getting any younger. Men aren't lining up to wed women past 30 who, Mom, I need to hang up, there's work waiting. Yet she never let up. And if I'm completely truthful, now that I've spent over 30 years married and raised 2 kids of my own, I can confess I felt isolated. Exhausted from returning to a silent apartment. Weary of seeing coworkers rush off to their children's sports practices while I remained behind to finish projects. Weary of always being the lone unmarried guest at every family event. So when my mother brought up Richard Hayes, I paid attention. He's Dorothy Hayes's boy. You recall Dorothy, she belonged to my reading group. Her son launched a computer business, extremely prosperous, strikingly good-looking, and he's prepared to commit. Mom, I'm not interested in more blind setups. This one's not the same. He's unique, Margaret. There was an incident a few years back. A motorcycle crash. It took his hearing. A certain note in her tone made me hesitate. He's deaf. Entirely. But he's adjusted remarkably. He lip reads with great skill. And he's fluent in signing. Dorothy insists he's still the same engaging person he always was, simply more reserved. Plenty of women shy away from that, you realize. But I believe you could be different. You've always shown such tolerance, such empathy. I should have recognized the calculation behind her words. Instead, I saw a possibility. A man unlikely to dismiss me for reaching 32 without a ring. A man perhaps thankful for a partner ready to study sign language and enter his reality. A man whose condition, I reasoned, might let him value me for my true self rather than my shortcomings. All right, I replied. Just dinner. Richard Hayes proved even more than my mother had described. Tall frame, dark hair touched with silver at the sides, keen brown eyes fixed on my mouth as I talked. Tailored expensive suits, a Mercedes in the driveway, and a career in Silicon Valley involving software I only vaguely grasped. Our initial meal took place at an elegant Italian spot in San Jose. I had devoted 2 weeks to studying elementary signs from a textbook, rehearsing alone before my mirror. Yet Richard eased everything. He carried a compact notebook and pen. Whenever my awkward gestures faltered, we exchanged messages like schoolkids sharing secrets. Your mother mentions you non-stop, he scribbled. The talented architect daughter. The determined one refusing to compromise. I chuckled, cheeks warming. She paints me like a prize she's marketing. He grinned, and with his following note I sensed a subtle change inside me. She didn't do you justice. We began seeing each other. If that term even fits. We shared meals, strolled beside the ocean, attended films where we sat close in the shadows, and I momentarily overlooked that he missed the spoken lines. He followed the captions when shown, occasionally grasping my hand during tender moments. I enrolled in proper sign language courses after office hours. Richard showed endless patience, softly adjusting my fingers, his touch warm while guiding me to form love or tomorrow or beautiful correctly. His mother Dorothy beamed with delight. She hosted us for Sunday suppers at her grand residence in Los Gatos, observing our signed exchanges across the table with glistening eyes. I feared he might remain alone forever, she confided one night when Richard had excused himself outside, supposedly for a call, though I later realized he was merely glancing at his pager. The crash changed him so deeply. He distanced himself from companions. Ended things with his girlfriend Julia. She claimed she couldn't cope with a partner who couldn't hear. Can you fathom such heartlessness? I couldn't. Julia lingered in my thoughts during those first months. What sort of individual deserts a loved one over an impairment? What shallow, self-centered person does that? 8 months after we began, Richard asked me to marry him. Not verbally, he supposedly couldn't, or so I thought. He led me to the shore at dusk, where he had etched massive words into the sand, "Will you marry me, Margaret?" Tears spilled as I signed yes repeatedly. When he slid the ring, a stunning diamond surely worth 3 months of my earnings, onto my finger, I felt like the most fortunate woman alive. 3 months later we wed in a modest service at a Napa Valley chapel. It felt perfect, private, attended only by close relatives and dear friends. A sign language interpreter facilitated the vows. As I signed my promises, tears flowed freely down my cheeks. I had discovered my match, my companion, a man who perceived my authentic self, who prized steadiness and compassion above casual chatter and surface appeal. A man who expressed himself deliberately, every note or sign deliberate and considered. On our wedding night I half expected him to break his silence. Don't such tales often end that way? The enchantment dissolves, the silence ends, but Richard stayed quiet. He conveyed everything through his hands, in signs and in intimate gestures I'll leave undescribed. I drifted to sleep in our hotel suite feeling treasured and whole. We settled into a proper house in Palo Alto, one with a garden, an extra bedroom, and a workspace where I could lay out my drafts. Richard's software venture thrived impressively. His colleagues discussed an IPO within the coming year. I reduced my schedule at the firm, Dorothy had encouraged it, and Richard signaled strong approval in his wordless manner. You'll prefer more time at home when children arrive, Dorothy remarked during one Sunday meal, squeezing my hand. 4 months post-wedding, I conceived. We hadn't actively tried, but neither had we taken precautions, and when the test displayed 2 pink lines, I hurried to Richard's study. Laughing and crying at once, fumbling my signs before simply presenting the stick. Joy spread across his features, he drew me onto his lap, kissed me deeply, embraced me fiercely. Then he eased back and signed deliberately. You will make a wonderful mother. The pregnancy proved tougher than anticipated, persistent nausea, draining fatigue that hindered concentration. By the 5th month I resigned from the architecture practice. The travel, extended days, and demands of on-site inspections had become overwhelming. Richard offered full support, naturally, his income more than covered us both. Dorothy rejoiced. Now you can devote yourself to what truly counts, she noted while we sorted infant clothes for the coming nursery, being a devoted spouse and parent. That is a woman's highest purpose. As I folded a soft yellow onesie printed with little ducks, sensing the baby's movements within, a question surfaced. "Dorothy, did you continue working once Richard was born?" "Goodness, no, his father would never have permitted it. A husband deserves a wife who tends the household." She always referred to her former spouse as Richard's father. Their separation occurred during Richard's college years, a topic she seldom touched. Yet she raised it then, and her manner unsettled me. "Richard and I talked it through and decided this suited us best," I answered resolutely, though in truth we hadn't deeply conferred. We had exchanged notes and signs about it. Was that equivalent to genuine discussion? Could authentic dialogue occur through signs with someone known for barely a year? 6 months along, weary and flooded with hormones. I prepared supper, grilled chicken and vegetables, his preferred meal, when he entered the room. I had just completed a note inquiring whether he preferred white or red wine alongside dinner, despite my own abstinence. I sought routine, strove to fulfill the role of a caring wife. He approached from behind, his presence radiating heat. I lifted the note toward him, and he spoke, "Margaret, I need to tell you something." My fingers released, the paper floated away. Everything froze. I pivoted gradually, my rounded belly brushing the edge of the counter. Richard stood before me, brown eyes locked on mine. Lips forming audible words, actual speech, genuine sound. "I am not deaf," he declared. "I never have been." The meaning refused to register. My supposedly deaf husband had voiced words. My supposedly deaf husband had confessed he could hear. "I hear every word you say perfectly," he went on. His tone was low, polished, refined, a voice concealed until this moment. "I've heard everything all along." My knees buckled. I steadied myself against the counter. The child inside kicked sharply, mirroring my racing pulse. "What?" I breathed, or believed I did. Sound may not have escaped. "Allow me to clarify." "What?" My volume rose. Undeniably louder. "What did you just say?" Richard raised open palms, a motion that now appeared threatening rather than soothing. "Please, hear me out, there is a purpose behind this. You're not deaf." It was no query. I spoke the truth aloud, willing it into existence. "You were never deaf." "Correct." "I was not." "The motorcycle crash?" "It never occurred." "Well, I did crash at 19, but suffered only scrapes. Minor abrasions. Nothing grave." I felt detached, observing the exchange from afar. This could not be happening. This could not be true. "You deceived me for nearly 2 years. It wasn't precisely deception. It resembled an evaluation." An evaluation, the phrase lingered between us like toxic vapor. "An evaluation," I echoed. My own voice sounded foreign. Remote. My mother suggested it, in fact. After Julia, my former girlfriend, departed, I shattered. We had planned a future together, then she simply vanished. Claimed I prioritized work too much, lacked romance, lacked thrill. Mother insisted I required someone who cherished me for my true nature, not my wealth or position. Someone tolerant. Someone compassionate. Someone enduring through hardship. His speech accelerated, phrases spilling as though long contained. And I now grasped, with mounting dread, that they had indeed been held back. We devised this arrangement. I would feign, unwilling to master signing, irritated by the obstacle, she would prove unsuitable. But one who persisted, who acquired the skill, who remained steady and empathetic, that woman would be exceptional. "And you located her," I murmured blankly. "You located your exceptional woman. How marvelous for you. Margaret. Is your mother aware you aren't truly deaf?" He paused. Only briefly, yet sufficiently. "Oh God." I retreated, palms pressing protectively over my abdomen. "Your mother knows. She has known from the start." Those tears at our dinners. The relief that I embraced you regardless of your supposed limitation. All orchestrated. She aimed to assist me in finding the proper match. Through falsehoods. I shouted now. I doubt I had ever raised my voice so fiercely. Through deceiving a lonely woman into commitment. Forcing me to acquire an entire language. Abandoning my profession. Surrendering my whole existence for a fabrication. You didn't surrender anything. You elected to study signing. You elected to leave your position. Because I believed my husband required it. The accusation tore from me. I believed you depended on my sacrifices. I believed I was showing loyalty. I believed I was an exemplary wife to a man facing adversity. But you face no adversity. You have a manipulative mother and, evidently, no conscience whatsoever. Richard blanched. That's unjust. Unjust? You wish to discuss justice? I mastered a complete language for your sake. I sacrificed my vocation for you. I carry your baby. My words cracked. I'm 6 months pregnant carrying your baby, and you've concealed the truth from me for 2 years. I never concealed it to your face. You couldn't watch my expression during our signing. Leave. Margaret, please, leave. This house. It belongs to both of us. I don't care. Get out. Stay with your mother, since the two of you seem such close allies and co-conspirators. He departed. Truly departed. Snatched his keys and exited, abandoning me in the kitchen with dinner. Scorching on the burner and my reality in pieces. The rest of that evening blurs. I know I phoned my sister Catherine, weeping so violently she struggled to comprehend me initially. She arrived swiftly, discovered me huddled on the kitchen floor amid my sign language textbooks, ripping pages free. He isn't deaf, I repeated. He never was. The entire thing was pretense. Completely. Catherine cradled me as I sobbed, stroking my back the way our mother once did in childhood, which prompted me, I must telephone Mom. Perhaps tomorrow would be wiser. But my fingers were already dialing. Mother picked up after 3 rings, sounding bright. Margaret, I didn't anticipate your call this evening. How is my son-in-law? Did you know? Quiet. Mom. Did you know? Know what, sweetheart? That Richard isn't deaf. That he's feigned it the entire time. That he and Dorothy engineered this whole ruse to judge whether I deserved their cherished son. Further silence. Then Dorothy remarked they wished to confirm any wife for Richard would be dedicated for proper motives. I ended the call, on my own mother. Slammed the receiver down and hurled the phone, it smashed against the wall. She knew, I informed Catherine. My own mother knew of the manipulation and permitted it. She likely believed she assisted. Finally marrying off her aging, single daughter. Oh, Maggie. Tears filled Catherine's gaze. Maggie, that childhood nickname only she used. Not Richard, who signed only my formal name. Not his mother. Not our mother. Only Catherine. What do I do now? I breathed. I'm 6 months pregnant. I left my career. Every cent of savings went into this home. I cannot. Yet the sentence died unfinished because I lacked any notion of what I could or could not manage. Depart? Remain? Begin anew? I was 33. 6 months expectant. Jobless. And I had just learned my marriage rested upon deception. Catherine remained with me that night and several afterward. Richard phoned incessantly. I ignored every ring. He appeared at the door. I bolted it and declared through the barrier that if he lingered I would summon the authorities. He sent lengthy handwritten notes, explanations, remorse, pleas for comprehension. I consigned them to the fire unread. Dorothy visited. I refused her entry. Margaret, let's be sensible, she pleaded from outside. You bear my grandchild. We must converse maturely. You deceived me for nearly 2 years. I responded. You observed my efforts to master signing. You observed me abandon my livelihood. You wept at our ceremony as though overcome with gratitude that anyone would accept your broken son, all while fully aware of the charade. While aware you both experimented on me like some specimen. We sought only to shield Richard. You sought to dictate his life. Dictate his choice of spouse. Ensure she proved docile enough, enduring enough, appreciative enough to tolerate your schemes. She departed. Yet the calls persisted, from her, from Richard, from my mother too, though I ceased responding. I remained solitary with my expanding belly, my fury, and my sorrow. For sorrow it was. The husband I wed never truly existed. The bond one nurtured belonged to an illusion, every gesture-based dialogue, every scribbled message, every instance of wordless connection, all of it felt corrupted now. Had he mocked me? When I rehearsed my gestures before him, fumbling the finger shapes, did he consider it funny? When I put in so much effort to connect with him, did he view me as foolish for not catching on? And far more devastating, did I truly understand him? What else had he fabricated? What other aspects of Richard Hayes were invented? Catherine was concerned about me. You're barely eating. You're not resting. This tension isn't healthy for the baby. None of this is healthy for the baby. You should speak with him. Sort things out. You're wedded. You're carrying his child. I don't even know if I want to remain wedded to him anymore. The statement lingered in the atmosphere. Catherine appeared shocked. Maggie, you can't be serious. But I was. Or I believed I was. I didn't know what I believed anymore. Dr. Patricia Chen was the counselor Catherine located for me. A serene lady in her 50s who focused on intricate partnership problems. I appreciated that she avoided calling it marital therapy because I wasn't certain I wanted to salvage the partnership as much as end it. Describe what occurred. Dr. Chen stated in our initial meeting. I shared everything. The entire tale spilled forth, my isolation prior to encountering Richard, the demands from my mother, the comfort of discovering someone who appeared to look beyond my age and single status. Mastering gesture language. Leaving my position. The expectancy. The disclosure. Dr. Chen heard without cutting in. Her expression impartial. When I concluded, she remarked, that's a significant deception. I began weeping once more. I'd been weeping non-stop for 2 weeks, it felt like. He claims it was an experiment. To discover someone who would cherish him for who he is. And how do you perceive that? I feel like I was a participant in some twisted competition where I was unaware of the contest. Dr. Chen agreed. That's legitimate. Your agreement was breached. You began a bond based on misleading circumstances. At last. Someone who comprehended. But I must pose a question to you, Margaret, and I want you to genuinely contemplate the response. She inclined forward a bit. In those 8 months prior to your wedding, while you were courting Richard, did you adore him? Naturally I did. That's why I wedded him. Why did you adore him? Because he was compassionate and considerate and tolerant and... because he was hearing impaired? I paused. No. Certainly not. Are you certain? Because from your account, the hearing-impaired man Richard was feigning to be possessed very particular traits. He was silent. He interacted intentionally. He couldn't cut you off or dominate the talk. He had to truly pay attention or seem to pay attention to all you penned or gestured. He appeared tolerant because he had no alternative. He appeared considerate because each interaction demanded consideration. That's not I didn't. I'm not implying you're a flawed individual, Margaret. I'm indicating that the motivations for our attractions to others are complex, and occasionally the exact elements we believe we adore in someone are really the elements we've imposed on them. I pondered that for an extended period. Was she accurate? Had I become enamored with Richard's quietness? With the reality that he couldn't evaluate me verbally, couldn't condemn, couldn't express the letdown I'd observed in every other man's expression when they recognized I was 32 and unattached and perhaps a bit too self-reliant? He still deceived, I stated eventually. Yes. He did. And that's unacceptable. But the issue isn't if his actions were incorrect. They obviously were. The issue is what you desire to pursue now. What did I desire to pursue? I was 7 months along by then. My abdomen was enormous, my feet were puffy, and I was surviving on Catherine's generosity and my shrinking funds. Richard had proposed to continue covering all expenses, but I'd declined. Accepting his funds felt like endorsing the falsehood. I don't know if I can ever rely on him again, I mentioned. That's reasonable. Reliance, once shattered, is extremely challenging to restore. But it's not unattainable. If, and this is a major if, both individuals are prepared to invest the effort. What effort? Ruthless candor. Total openness. Responsibility. And duration. A considerable duration. I reflected on that while I drove back, well, to Catherine's residence, which was my base now. Could I invest that effort? Did I wish to? The infant shifted forcefully and I placed my palm on my abdomen. What do you believe? I inquired. Should we offer your dad an opportunity? Another shift. I interpreted it as affirmative. Or perhaps just indigestion. It was difficult to discern. Richard attended counseling with me the next week. It was the first time I'd encountered him in a month, and he appeared awful. Leaner. Shadowy beneath his eyes. His typically flawless attire was creased. He began to gesture something instinctively, then halted himself. Apologies, routine. Don't, I snapped. Don't you dare employ gesture language with me again. His hands fell. All right. Dr. Chen established guidelines for us. I could pose any inquiry, and Richard had to respond truthfully, regardless. He couldn't depart until the meeting concluded. And we both had to pledge to return. Why? I inquired initially. Not the nonsense about seeking genuine affection. The actual motive. Why did you inflict this on me? Richard gazed at his hands. Then at Dr. Chen. Then, ultimately, at me. Because I'm a weakling. I hadn't anticipated that. Julia didn't abandon me because I wasn't affectionate enough. She abandoned me because I'm dull, Margaret. I'm skilled with tech and figures, but I'm awful with individuals. Casual chat causes me stress. Group settings drain me. I'm clumsy and rigid and I never know what to express. So, you chose to express nothing whatsoever. Yes. He locked eyes with me. Being hearing impaired provided me a justification. I didn't need to engage in dialogue at gatherings. I didn't need to be charismatic. I could simply be. And folks would perceive me as resilient and courageous rather than odd and unsociable. And I was what? Your ideal impaired spouse ornament? Someone to care for you and enhance your image? No. You were. You were incredible, Margaret. Intelligent and gifted and attractive. Far beyond my reach. But as a hearing-impaired man, I had a shot. You viewed me as someone who required you. Someone you could assist. And I exploited that because I'm self-centered and frightened and I didn't consider how it would impact you. I desired to strike him. Or yell at him. Or both. You're correct, I respond. Instead, you are a weakling. And self-centered. And you robbed nearly 2 years of my existence. I know. You observed me relinquish my profession. I know. And that was mistaken. If you wish to return to design, I'll back that. Monetarily, practically, whatever you require. I'm on the verge of having a child, Richard. I can't precisely begin a fresh role at this moment. Then afterward. Whenever you're prepared, I'll employ a caregiver. I'll take family time off. Whatever is necessary. Dr. Chen stepped in. Richard, what Margaret is conveying is that the repercussions of your trickery are tangible and enduring. You can't simply remedy them with funds or assurances. I know. He gazed at me once more. I know I can't remedy this. But I want to attempt. If you'll permit me. I didn't reply. Couldn't reply. We attended counseling weekly. Occasionally bi-weekly. Richard addressed every query I posed, no matter how distressing. Did he mock me? Occasionally, yes, when I botched gestures severely. Did he peruse my personal diaries? No, never. And he appeared truly wounded that I'd assume he would. Did he adore me? Yes. He affirmed yes, with moisture in his eyes. And I desired to trust him, but I didn't know how. 8 months expectant, I relocated back to the residence. Not to Catherine's, to the dwelling in Palo Alto. Richard's dwelling. Our dwelling. Whatever. But I had stipulations. He rested in the spare chamber. We weren't a couple. We were 2 individuals sharing space, until I determined what I desired to do. That's acceptable, Richard stated, whatever you require. The infant arrived 3 weeks later. A girl. 10 digits, 10 toes. A robust pair of vocals that she showcased right away. They positioned her on my torso, this small flawless being, and I glanced up to see Richard weeping in the corner of the birthing suite. Do you wish to cradle her? I inquired. He nodded, incapable of speaking. Genuinely incapable of speaking this time, overwhelmed with feeling. I passed our.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a twist. Stay tuned to Reddit Tales Times for your daily dose of drama, laughs, and unbelievable stories.